guys, a problem like this really tests their rounding skills, so I wanted to go over a rounding problem like this. So when they show them something like this, it will say fill in the bubbles to complete the table, and it's going to show the original problem or the original number, and then it's going to give you an already rounded number. And their job is to figure out if they rounded to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100. So there are some tricks to do this, but I would go the long way. I would round 357 to the roundest to the nearest 10, and then I would round 357 to the nearest 100 and see which one matches. Because every once in a while, there's a number that can be rounded to the nearest 10 and the nearest 100 and be that same number. So I'll show you what I mean. So 357. Now, 360 was already rounded, so I'm going to round it myself. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to put 357, and I'm going to round it to the nearest 10. So I'm going to make my number line real quick, and I know tens is when I'm looking at this. So I know I'm going to be 350 is going to be a close 10, and then the next 10 is going to be 360. Right in the middle will be 355, but the answer is going to be one of these. So it's either going to be 350 or 360. My job is to see which 10 is it closer to. This is not a 10, it's just kind of there in the middle to help me see which side it's going to be on. So this whole number is going to be after 355 because it's 357. So that means it's closer to 360. And that's when I round it to the nearest 10. So I'm going to say nearest 10. Now I want to do the nearest 100. So I'm going to take that same number, but instead of the nearest tens, I'm going to do the nearest hundreds. I know hundreds always end in 2 zeros. So 100, 200, 300. So what's the closest hundreds to 357? Well, 300. And then the next 100 is going to be 400. So those are going to be, one of these are going to be my answer. To help me with my answer, I'm going to find the midpoint, what's right in the middle of those two, which is 350. And now I can put my original number. I know it's going to go on this side of 357, and my answer is going to be 400. So what was my new number? That they rounded to 360. Well, I got 360 as well when I rounded to the nearest 10. So they must have rounded to the nearest 10, which is A. It will say nearest 10 here. So I'm going to bubble in A. Now I got another problem to do, 382. I'll do this one on the side. So 382, they rounded to the nearest 400. Oh, I have a little hint. They probably rounded to the nearest 100 because it has 2 zeros. And I know hundreds always have 2 zeros. But remember, I still have to do the tens just in case, because this is also a 10 because it has 1 zero. So this could be a 10 and a 100. So first I'm going to round it to the nearest 10 and make my number line. Here's my 10 right here, so I'm going to start with 380. The next 10 would be 390, and right in the middle would be 385. Remember, that's not going to be my answer, it's just a helper. One of these are going to be my answer. 382 would fall in right here, very close to 380. So my answer, or rounding, when I'm rounding to the nearest 10, the answer is going to be 380. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to round to the nearest 100 this time. So I'm going to start with 300. I'm going to forget this 80 because now I'm looking at the hundreds. So my first endpoint is 300. The second endpoint will be the next 100, which is 400. Right in the middle will be 350. And then my 382 would actually fall on this side of the 350, making it closer to 400. So when I round it to the nearest 100, I get 400. Let's see our new number again. When they rounded, their new number was 400. I got that answer too when I rounded to the nearest 100. So that means they rounded to this to the nearest 100. So this column is for nearest 10, which they didn't do. This column was the nearest 100. Yep, that matches what our work. So they must have rounded to the nearest 100. I'll have one more problem. 204. So first I'm going to round to the nearest 10. Make my little number line. So this one, look how there's no like tens place, but 0, remember, is still a tens place. So I'm going to keep my hundreds place, but there's nothing in the tens place, and since it's 100, remember, since it's a 10, all tens end with 0. So we got 200, which is 100, and it's also a 10, but we're looking at the tens as this, we're looking at this number as a 10. So the next one would be 210. And right in the middle of that is 205. So there's only 10 jumps through here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we're only, from here to here is only 10. And that makes sense because we're rounding to the nearest 10. Now 204 would fall, if this is the middle right here, it would fall right here, which makes it just a little bit closer to 200. So the answer would be 200. That's what we have here. So maybe, well, we know that they rounded to the nearest 10. But don't be tricked, because you might just stop there. But these problems can be a little tricky if you don't do the whole thing. So we're going to round to the nearest 100. So the first closest 100 would be 200. And the next 100, instead of 210, that's a 10, the next 100 would be 300. Right in the middle would be 250. So it's, remember that our answer is going to be one of the endpoints. So we take our 204 and we're going to put it really close to the 200, meaning the answer, even when rounding to the nearest 100, so that, remember this is tens, the one we did up here, this one we're rounding to hundreds. So even when we're rounding to the hundreds, we still get 200. So in this case, doesn't matter if you round to the nearest 10, you still get 200, or the nearest 100, you still get 200. So in this case, both answers are true. So it's E and F. Then you would have to bubble A, B, wait, not A, not B, A, D, E, and F. So look at all this work I had to do for one. And you can't go as slow as I did either. You have to kind of go quicker. But I went slow to explain some things. But yeah, it's not an easy test, but you are capable of doing this. So make sure you read that question, code that text, and then show your work.